Good afternoon. Please remain standing and join in singing our national anthem, led by music professor Anthony O'Furley.
What so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please be seated. Please be seated. I want to welcome you to the University of Florida 2014 Fall Commencement. Today we're celebrating the academic and the personal achievements of our students who will receive their doctoral degrees from our institution. I want to extend a special welcome to our distinguished platform guests, our commencement speaker and distinguished professor emeritus, Dr. Garth Schmeling, and representing the University of Florida Board of Trustees from Palm Harbor, David Brandon, and from Gainesville, Faculty Senate Chair Pradeep Kumar. Along with them are the vice presidents of the university and the deans of our colleges. Would you all please stand so we can recognize you? At this time, I'd like to have all the faculty who are present in the hall today please stand so that we can thank you for your commitment to the students and to the university and to our great state of Florida. Would all the faculty please stand? Thank you. And because graduation is a family event, we would like to give our graduates an opportunity to publicly show their appreciation to all of those who have helped them reach this important milestone in their lives. So will the family and friends of any of the graduates in the hall please rise so that we can recognize and thank you. Today, our university is privileged to present an honorary degree to an outstanding businesswoman and leader. Other than the earned doctorate, the greatest recognition the University of Florida can give an individual is an honorary degree. The awarding of an honorary degree is in recognition of eminent achievement in scholarship or high distinction in public service, which exemplifies the purposes and the ideals of this university. I ask Provost Glover to present Ms. Linda Parker Hudson for conferral of the honorary degree, Doctor of Science. Joe.
Thank you, President Machen. As the first female president to lead a major U.S. defense company, Linda Parker Hudson has reached the pinnacle of professional success. She has also blazed a trail for women leaders in the defense industry, making it her mission to remove the barriers that have historically discouraged female participation in a heavily male-dominated sector. Ms. Hudson is President and CEO of BAE Systems, a global defense and aerospace company with nearly $13 billion in annual revenue and 40,000 employees. She came to BAE from General Dynamics, where she was an officer, vice president, and president of the company's armament and technical products. Prior to that time, she led organizations at Martin Marietta after launching her career with Harris Corporation and Ford Aerospace. At BAE, Ms. Hudson has guided the company through a period of unprecedented growth through reducing costs while increasing efficiency and the time required for products to reach the market. She has also worked hard to build a diverse and inclusive workplace that attracts and retains world-class professionals. She further sought to strengthen our nation's technical talent pipelines by advocating for the advancement of STEM education. Ms. Hudson received her bachelor's degree in systems engineering with honors from the University of Florida in 1972. She is, by any measure, one of the most successful graduates of the UF Engineering College. Yet, despite her fame and the extensive demands on her schedule, she continues to mentor students and provide career advice, helping to shape generations of future Gator engineers. Linda Parker Hudson is an extremely accomplished business executive, a prominent advocate of women leaders, and one of the engineering college's most well-known and active alumni. For these and many more achievements, the University of Florida is proud to recognize her today with the honorary degree of Doctor of Science.
Linda Parker Hudson, we honor you for your many achievements that have benefited this university, your profession, the nation, and indeed the world. The University of Florida takes great pride in recognizing you for these achievements. And on behalf of the University of Florida, with the unanimous consent of the Faculty Senate and the Board of Trustees, and by the authority vested in me, I hereby confer upon you the honorary degree Doctor of Science. Congratulations. I would also like to recognize Dr. Parker Hudson's family, colleagues, and friends who have joined us here today. Would you all please rise so that we can recognize you?
That's me.
That's you.
Today, I have the distinct honor of introducing an accomplished scholar, teacher, and one of the University of Florida's most distinguished professors, our keynote speaker, Dr. Gareth Schmeling. Dr. Schmeling earned his doctoral degree from the University of Wisconsin in 1968, focusing on the Roman writer and satirist Petronius. He joined UF in 1970 as an associate professor of classics. He was promoted to full professor in 1974 and chair of the classics department in 1976. He remained in that position for nearly 2 decades, establishing a legacy as one of the chief architects of the department, while also advancing his scholarship and inspiring countless students with his erudite and stimulating lectures. Dr. Schmeling served as director of the UF Center for Studies in the Humanities from 1978 to 1984, as acting chair of the Department of Philosophy from 1986 to 1988, and as director of the UF Writing Program from 2003 to 2004. He was named Distinguished Professor of Classics in 1998 and currently serves as UF Distinguished Distinguished Professor of Classics Emeritus and visiting scholar at Johns Hopkins University. He is the author of 10 books, including The Novel in the Ancient World, A History of Roman Literature, and a bibliography of Petronius. He has also authored dozens of articles, reviews, and conference publications. Dr. Schmeling is an active and engaged observer of UF and the higher education world throughout his nearly 50-year career, and he has the stories to prove it. I hope he will share some of those stories with us this afternoon. Will you please join me in welcoming one of the pillars of the UF Classics Department and one of our university's most highly accomplished scholars and teachers, Distinguished Professor Emeritus, Dr. Gareth Schmeling. Gareth?
A mind is a terrible thing to waste, as our black neighbors tell us. Or as Dan Quayle, former vice president, said, a mind is a terrible thing to lose. I wish that I could somehow learn to forget about politicians losing their minds. I would rather talk to you and encourage you not to make up your mind now about where exactly you are going and what you are going to do for the next 50 years, no matter your dissertation area. A mind is a terrible thing to waste, but at an early age, do not confine it, do not box it, store it, or take a Procrustean axe to it. Procrustean is one of the many classical references in this little talk. And do not confuse your short-term interests in a job with Thomas Jefferson's long-term pursuit of happiness. Your job should allow you to afford this pursuit of happiness, but do not confuse the two. Many people of my generation have done just that, but did not realize it until they were too old, too far gone to do anything about it. But to the immediate matters of my graduation speech and your life after 19 December 2014. Even though I am no longer as sharp as I once thought I was, I have noted a phenomenon of modern American life. Whatever I do and wherever I go, I am expected to leave a tip. Therefore, in keeping with this new modus vivendi, another classical reference, I would like to make this point about graduation etiquette. Bernie Machen has been president of UF for many stressful years. Therefore, you might consider leaving him a tip of, say, 20 or 10 or 20 bucks as you exit these ceremonies. This current etiquette also means that it is expected that you give the commencement speaker something. Say 15 or 20% of your annual tuition. I take credit cards and give a discount for graduates of English, philosophy, and art history. The money, however, is not for me, but for the 2018 Florida political campaigns. The slogan for this will be, "No one for governor." The money will be used to buy up all of the TV and radio time so that during the whole year before the next election, citizens of Florida will be treated to the best classical music. Life in Florida will again be serene. And all the buildings in Tallahassee which house the governor, the Senate, and the House will be opened to the homeless and thus finally put to good use. Bernie Machen has moved U.S. forward in concrete ways, despite Governor Rick Scott. And he has raised the money to pay for it, despite the governor. And he has done it all without calling attention to himself, unlike the governor. The governor is a rich man who continues to enrich himself. Bernie Matchin is a bright man, and he lights the way for others. 4 years from now, the governor will no longer hold office and will disappear. And no one except health insurance regulators will remember who he was. Many years from now, the good that Bernie Matchin did at UF will still be remembered, because what he did was real, and real achievements bring long-lasting effects. One person can make a difference, but good persons are very hard to find. Looking back, I remember a lot of things from the day I graduated. I had a throbbing headache from the party of the night before, about the same intensity as the one after my bachelor party. Must be connected. I finished school with a 3.96 average, but I am not certain whether it was my grade point average or my blood alcohol level. I have no memory who the commencement speaker was, and I certainly do not remember what he said. Acknowledging that fact, and that I cannot make this speech memorable, I will at least make it short. Since we live in the Bible Belt, I can admit that I take advice from the Bible, not the New Testament, the part memorized by Baptists, but the Old Testament, the part read by people like me who enjoy good writing. So I will begin with this passage from Ecclesiastes 5:2. Ecclesiastes, that most poetic of books. Let us pray. Be not rash with thy mouth, and let not thine heart be hasty to utter anything before God. For God is in heaven, and thou upon earth. Therefore let thy words be few. And I'm going to follow that. The parents in this audience who doubted whether you would ever leave Gainesville are pleased to have produced such remarkable young people as yourself. The faculty is pleased to have produced such remarkable graduates, despite anything their parents tried to do to them. The UF Foundation is happy that such potentially wealthy alumni have produced, despite everything that the faculty tried to do to them. The graduating students themselves are pretty damned happy, and perhaps even a bit surprised that they turned out so well, despite everything that the pompous asses and all the above categories tried to do to them. Well, young people, I'm the final pompous ass. The last windbag between you and your diploma. Therefore, permit me the privilege of age and the courtesy to look back and humor this old man for just one moment. Apropos of nothing whatsoever, I'd like to share this with you. The desire to reminisce arises not so much, I think, from the number of years you might have accumulated as from the number of people who meant most to you in life, and to those who have gone on what the Roman poet Catullus calls the long, dark journey into night. They were the bulwarks, the bright shining spires on the hill, the strong places. When they have gone, you are a little tired. You rest on your oars and think to yourself, there are no witnesses to my fine little fury, my small heroic efforts. It is better to remember, to be sure, the good that was, rather than the evil that is. It was a stout world thus far, peopled with all manner of gracious and kindly and even noble personages. But after a while, particularly if you have cut no very splendid figure in the mini-series of life, indulgence of this sort of communing becomes a vice. With some addicts, it takes the form of dreaming. Silently, the best way, I believe, and these are mostly women. With others, it is conversation, and these are mostly men. Very tiresome unless you happen to be one of them. But the most abandoned of the whole bunch insists that they must write it all down, publish it, and then use some of it at commencement speeches. And of this last group, I am one. After my confession, we can now get back to my sermon, which you have probably already forgotten, is about Thomas Jefferson's pursuit of happiness. Jefferson was an inspiring writer, but a lousy human being. He owned 650 slaves whom he refused to free, even in his will, because all of his capital was invested in slaves. Had he freed them and not sold them, his creditors would have seized his wine cellar and his library. Fortunately, today we can step around this thorny problem and focus on Jefferson's words, not deeds. The pursuit of happiness. What to do in the future to find happiness. The connection between happiness and money is tenuous, but I suppose that to secure the first, you must procure a medium-sized pile of the second. If the goal in life is to pursue an ever larger pile, happiness will become an ever smaller target. Perhaps it is possible to determine how much of a pile is enough, and then devote one's remaining efforts to the pursuit of happiness. The connection between happiness and friendship is strong, and I have known many happy people who assure me that persons with friends can calculate that their income is doubled. The claim that the activity that adds most to happiness is a regular drink or dinner with a friend, or best of all, acquiring a cat from the local animal shelter. Finding a life partner perhaps adds most to the pursuit of happiness. I would agree with that. Thomas Jefferson did not. After his wife died, the warm body in Jefferson's bed belonged to Sally Hemings, one of his slaves, whom he did not free, choosing instead to purchase more of the 1801 vintage Bordeaux. One of the worst detractions from happiness, it seems to me, is everyday noise and rush with no time to do it right the first time. The long searches for a parking place near campus, being put on hold by someone who has called me, reading email, having a driver in the car in front of me swerve while he texts his golf partner, and lastly, the realization that while the dispensing of information plus pictures is instantaneous, the healing of broken bodies and shattered dreams after disasters takes as long now as it did in ancient Greece and Rome. In your immediate future, you will encounter pressing needs and have little time to consider somewhat distant goals. Perhaps you will, as talking heads from sociology tell us, spend the next 10 years or so wandering around American society. Young people of my generation, not particularly intelligent, did 4 things in quick succession in their first years. They took an advanced degree, found a job, got married, bought a house, and tried to pay off the mortgage. They did these things by about the age of 30 to 35. Most people today will not have the opportunity to do these 4 things by age 30 to 35. Today you will get your degree, but if you are like many of your fellow students getting a degree in 2014, you will, as I have observed, spend the next 10 years or so of your lives moving around America, perhaps even moving around a foreign country, moving from job to job, experimenting with various careers, or just struggling to stay alive. And while you are engaged in these activities, your parents will try to keep silent, but quietly go insane. Your life will almost surely be an odyssey of some kind. Remember Homer's Odysseus. After marrying Penelope, another classical reference, he spent 10 years fighting at Troy and another 10 years trying to return home. Penelope waited 20 years for her husband. An education in classics would have warned you that life can put many tasks in your way, tasks that you, like Penelope, could not have anticipated. But also, like Penelope, you will probably also fall in love. This won't be an abstract proposition. Like Penelope, you will find a real live person with a name, a face, unwanted body odors, and body hair. By choosing partners correctly, or do I mean luckily, Penelope's marriage could endure the long separation. Odysseus' decision to marry Penelope was the most important in his life. If he had had a great career and a bad marriage, he would have been miserable. Instead, he had a great marriage and an unpleasant career. It is possible for some to pursue and reach happiness. We can discuss mythology for hours, but we must return to the subject of your life, beginning tomorrow. Some of you might be thrown into badly managed situations in businesses, universities, government agencies, and a voice inside you will ask, "Can I do a better job than a jerk who calls himself my boss?" Some of you might have relatives and friends with long-term illnesses. A voice inside you will ask, "Can I help?" Tasks will be imposed on you that you cannot now imagine. Remember old Odysseus. Think of what befell Oedipus. Aeneas lost Troy in battle and then lost his father and wife as they tried to escape Troy. I realize that these are not historical figures, but characters from mythology. But I can assure you that characters from mythology, be they Sisyphus, Tantalus, Prometheus, Ajax, will loom large in your life and haunt your nighttime hours. Many tasks imposed upon you will have names. So, what's it like out there in the real world? Well, the food is better. And beyond that, however, I can't say that I recommend it. That's why I have hidden for my whole life inside of academia, only to find out too late that academia is really part of the real world. When I became aware of that, I was almost crushed. So there are only two paths ahead of you. One leads to a soul-crunching job as a cog in a corporate machine, which includes academia. The other leads to permanent residence in your parents' basement. First, my generation leaves you a mountain of debt, and then this note about careers comes from someone whose advice will not help you to pay it off. When I started my academic career, the pay was lousy, but the job was something that I loved. And I looked forward to going to work. But the nature of all jobs changes. Current jobs have few resemblances to what they were 45 years ago. Pay for academics has improved, but the job got worse. Then at the magical age of 65, life laid down a task for me, and I took it up. My enjoyment is now a little less. My satisfaction is greater. In my short talk, I have not given you any concrete, useful advice. I feel bad about that. And I am afraid that you, like your fathers and mothers, will have to just learn for yourselves. An elderly faculty member at Virginia, whom I met shortly after taking up a post there, offered me sound advice. He said, "Faculty who wish to succeed would do well to avoid getting between a student and his education." That's why you can't find faculty members. No, this has not been a practical talk. It is a tradition, however, that at graduation we have commencement speeches. I cannot say exactly why we have them, but I like traditions. And anyway, there are too many things of these things that I do not understand. For example, why do graduating students wear caps and gowns? Why do serious grown men wear neckties? One tradition I can understand, judging by your bloodshot and bleary eyes, that the night before graduation was a night marked by alcohol and hedonism. Another Greek word. But you were absolutely right to do so. I can tell you that all the older people within the sound of my voice secretly wish that they had done more partying while at school. My father did so many good things for me when I was growing up. He assured me that I was an average boy, nothing less, nothing more, that the big bad world would not change for me and that I would have to change for it. I was not the center or central focus of anything, not even my own life. Later, he did encourage me that after education I might consider throwing myself against the currents of our culture, because those tasks and summons were actually the things at the center of my life. My father also taught me that I owed society for my education. This was long before student loans. In my time, no solvent bank would loan to a student. So all of you owe, but you owe the bank. It was perhaps better to owe society. You bright people do not need my advice, and you do not need my help. You will never have more energy or enthusiasm or hair or brain cells than you do today. You just need to take on the tasks and summons of life and get the damn job done. Go to it. Talk to your spouse sometimes at breakfast. Give aid and comfort to another human being. Be kind to animals. Rotate your tires. Don't drink more than I do. There aren't going to be enough liver transplants to go around. Thank you. Good.
There's some pearls in there, but you got to listen for them, because he disguises his message very well. We're glad you're back. Thanks for the message today. And now we're at the point that we've all been waiting for. That's the conferral of your degree. Dr. Henry Frierson, Dean of the Graduate School, will present the candidates for the degrees Doctor of Philosophy and Doctor of Education, and Trustee David Brandon will confer the degree upon the candidates.
Thank you, President Machen. Will the candidates for the degrees Doctor of Philosophy and Doctor of Education please rise? Trustee Brandon, these candidates, having completed all the requirements for the degrees Doctor of Philosophy and Doctor of Education, and having been recommended by the graduate faculties of their colleges and the graduate school, are presented to you for the conferring of their degrees.
Thank you. On behalf of the people of the state of Florida, by the powers vested in the UF Board of Trustees, I'm pleased to confer upon you the degrees of Doctor of Philosophy or Doctor of Education with the accompanying rights, privileges, and responsibilities. I offer you my congratulations and commend you on the successful completion of your doctoral degree. You may be seated.
And now on the martial signal, will the new Doctors of Philosophy and Education please come forward to the platform for the formal investiture. Faculty members will be escorting the doctoral degree graduates and they are the ones who have worked most closely with them. It is appropriate to acknowledge the valuable mentoring role that the men and women of the faculty have played in educating this class of scholars. So it is, in fact, a dual recognition today.
The College of Agricultural and Life Sciences, Elaine Turner, Dean.
Dr. Alyssa Hae-Soon Cho, escorted by Professor Greg McDonald. Dr. Mildred McCaney, escorted by Professor Stephen Sargent. Dr. Shel Guapino, escorted by Professor Stephen A. Sargent. Dr. Nathaniel Heapowit, escorted by Professor Julie Maupin-Furlow. Dr. April Melanie Sapp, escorted by Professor Kelly Rice. Dr. Denise Mello, escorted by Professor Marianne Schmink. Dr. Jessica Holt, escorted by Professors Ricky Tellig and Professor Joy Rumble. Dr. Benjamin Keith Atkinson, escorted by Professor Perrin Ross. Dr. Melissa Ramirez Rodriguez, escorted by Professor Senthold Assing. Dr. Yuan Yu, escorted by Professor Fred Gamitter. Dr. Jean Zhang, escorted by Professor Kevin Kenworthy. Dr. Jing Hu, escorted by Professor Kandra R. Reddy. Dr. Sutya Shu, escorted by Professor Kanika Sharma Inglet. Dr. Shinsing Wang, escorted by Professor Ben Gao. Dr. Natalia Martinez, escorted by Professor Jose Santos. Dr. Daniel Taylor Rodriguez, escorted by Professor Linda Young. Dr. Ali Ahmed Al-Raji, escorted by Professor Ann Matthews. Dr. Zhizhao Lu, escorted by Professor Anita Wright. Dr. Luisa Rios Avila, escorted by Professor Jesse Gregory. Dr. Gary Todd Cooper, escorted by Professor Philip F. Harmon. Dr. Alina Fernandez, escorted by Professor Philip F. Harmon. Dr. Christopher Catu, escorted by Professor Philip F. Harmon. Dr. Nastaran Tofang Sasi, escorted by Professor Stephen Arthurs. Dr. Melissa May Cry, escorted by Professor Damian Adams.
The College of the Arts, Edward Schaefer, Associate Dean.
Dr. Eleanor Ann Laughlin, escorted by Professors Hyde and Stanfield Muzzy.
The College of Design, Planning, and Construction, Peggy Carr, Associate Dean.
Dr. Pamela Driza, escorted by Dr. Nam Hugh Park. Dr. Glenda K. Mayo, escorted by Professor Raja Raymond Issa. Dr. Lauren Harbin, escorted by Professor Kristen Larson. Dr. Peter Donkor, escorted by Professor Esther Oboinyo.
The College of Education, Glenn Good, Dean.
Dr. Kristen Michelle Arendt Page, escorted by Professor Harry Daniels. Dr. LaTorre Griffin, escorted by Professor Harry Daniels. Dr. Courtney Allen, escorted by Professor Sandra Laurie Smith. Dr. Amy Roth Rosenthal, escorted by Professor Tina Smith Bonahue. Dr. Yasmin Gunpinar, escorted by Professor Tim Jacoby. Dr. Jennifer Nutowski, escorted by Professor Allison Adams. Dr. Jason Allen Skipper, escorted by Professor Allison Adams. Dr. Sarah Baird, escorted by Professor Bernie Oliver. Dr. Laura Angela Alvarez, escorted by Professor Bernie Oliver. Dr. Sung Joon Kim, escorted by Professor Bernard Oliver. Dr. Kevin C. Jones, escorted by Professor Dale Campbell. Dr. Kelly Essery, escorted by Professor Dale Campbell. Dr. Jamonica LaShawn Roll, escorted by Professor Dale Campbell. Dr. Jasmine Alston Davis, escorted by Professor Dale Campbell.
The College of Engineering, Cami Abernathy, Dean.
Dr. John Baker, escorted by Professor Clay Montague. Dr. Kenton McBride, escorted by Professor Ronald Cook. Dr. Salim Arol, escorted by Professor Mark Orazem. Dr. Robert Mueller, escorted by Professor Mark Orazem. Dr. Onaban Charduri, escorted by Professor Raphael Hefka. Dr. Sayan Banerjee, escorted by Professor Bhavani Sankar. Dr. Ifai Shun, escorted by Professor Mirnal Kumar. Dr. Injun Park, escorted by Professor John Shea. Dr. Yang Liao, escorted by Professor Renato Figueiredo. Dr. Selvi Carvel, escorted by Professor Renato Figueiredo. Dr. Hyung Suk escorted by Professor Renato Figueiredo. Dr. Jeremy Fowers, escorted by Professor Renato Figueiredo. Dr. Shansi Augustine, escorted by Professor Toshikaru Nishida. Dr. Tae-Ri Nguyen, escorted by Professor Martin Uman. Dr. John Pilkey, escorted by Professor Martin Heumann. Dr. William Gamarota, escorted by Professor Martin Heumann. Dr. Chien-Ming Nye, escorted by Professor Jen-Shan Liu. Dr. Michael Bobek, escorted by Professor David Hahn. Dr. David Mills, escorted by Professor Mark Sheplak. Dr. G. Zhou, escorted by Professor Henry Sedano. Dr. Ji John Ni, escorted by Professor Thomas Burks. Dr. Mahmoud Kedaraga, escorted by Professor Wansuk Lee. Dr. Mazin Sabir, escorted by Professor Wansuk Lee. Dr. Alireza Peraza, escorted by Professor Wansuk Lee. Dr. Wee Sung Lee, escorted by Professor William Lear. Dr. Fenner Colson, escorted by Professor William Lear. Dr. Jin Nesh Soni, escorted by Professor Subrata Roy. Dr. Andre Toder, escorted by Professor Aline Dobra. Dr. Yi Zhu, escorted by Professor Sumi Hadal. Dr. Yifang Wang, escorted by Professor Sanjay Ranka. Dr. Hisun Odin, Dr. Hisun Odin Salihan, escorted by Professor Sanjay Ranka. Dr. Miao Tian, escorted by Professor Justin Davis. Dr. Nelia Long, escorted by Professor Wesley Bolch. Dr. Anna Mensch, escorted by Professor Manuel Erleola. Dr. Chao Wang, escorted by Professor Ming Zhao Ding. Dr. Sheng Feng Yang, escorted by Professor Yu Ping Chen. Dr. Jin Hyung Lee, escorted by Professor Rajiv Singh.
The College of Health and Human Performance, Michael Reed, Dean.
Dr. Mindy Allison Mann, escorted by Professor Dean Michael Reed.
The College of Journalism and Communication, Debbie Treacy, Senior Associate Dean.
Dr. Maryam Al-Kazemi, escorted by Professor Wayne Wanta. Dr. Christine Eschenfelder, escorted by Professor Johanna Cleary. Dr. Edward Salisbury, escorted by Professor David Ostroff.
The College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, Milagros Peña, Associate Dean.
Dr. Ramon Galinanes, Jr., escorted by Professor Philip Williams. Dr. Winifred Pancani Lindberg, escorted by Professor Connor O'Dwyer. Dr. Olga Miryukova, escorted by Professor M.J. Hardman. Dr. Amanda Naomi Schwait, escorted by Professor Michael Herkov. Dr. Donovan Lamar Thompson, escorted by Professor Brent Summerlin. Dr. Philip Scott Ellis Green, escorted by Professor Vasuda Narayanan. Dr. David Hoot, escorted by Professor Mary Ann Everly. Dr. Tobin Gerald Shorey, escorted by Professor Alice Fryfield. Dr. Andrea Danielle Davis, escorted by Professor Catherine Russell Brown. Dr. Carmen Alondra Lager Diaz, escorted by Professor William Keegan. Dr. Zachary Gilmore, escorted by Professor Kenneth Sassaman. Dr. Carlos Zambrano, escorted by Professor David Daling. Dr. Michelle Lefebvre, escorted by Professor Susan DeFrance. Dr. Nicole Botteri, escorted by Professor Louis Guillette. Dr. Richard Ottens, escorted by Professor Guido Mueller. Dr. Grant Thomas Godden, escorted by Professor Pamela Soltis. Dr. Kadesh Lauritsen, escorted by Professor Judith Page. Dr. Eva Maria McFadden, escorted by Professor Judith Page. Dr. Kristen Denslow, escorted by Professor Judith Page. Dr. Tanya Diane Darlington, escorted by Professor Barbara Menel. Dr. Claudia Monzon, escorted by Professor Eric Keyes. Dr. Catherine Guinevere Holton Topham, escorted by Professor Brian Iwata. Dr. Sahar Mirshamsi, escorted by Professor Hai Ping Chung. Dr. Shengguo Li, escorted by Professor Hai Ping Chung. Dr. Timothy David Fritz, escorted by Professor John Sensbaugh. Dr. Francois Jacques Albert Michonneau, escorted by Professor Gustave Pauli. Dr. Hussam Alawad, escorted by Professor Paula Golombek. Dr. Ali Sinol Gundagan, escorted by Professor Kirk Shans. Dr. Corey Steadwell, escorted by Professor Nicholas Poffer. Dr. Lynn Faum, escorted by Professor George Christou. Dr. Meng Liu, escorted by Professor Yun Mei Chun. Dr. Roberto Eduardo Weiss, escorted by Professor Bruce Goldberger.
The College of Medicine, Michael Good, Dean.
Dr. Ryan Chastain Gross, escorted by Professor Ann Progolsky Fox. Dr. Irina Marie Valesco, escorted by Professor Kazusava Lakshamaya. It's a tough one. Okay. Dr. Yushan Tsang, escorted by Professor Robert McKenna. Dr. Young Young Park, escorted by Shang Hu Cha. Dr. Jennifer K. Lyles, escorted by Professor Richard Snyder. Dr. Marianne Goodwin, escorted by Professor Maurice Swanson. Dr. Zhuin Jiang, escorted by Professor Todd Goldie. Dr. Vanita Chittor, escorted by Professor Lucia Notterpeck. Dr. Che V. In, escorted by Professor Arthur Edison. Dr. Ying Yi Young, escorted by Professor Morel Lawrence. Dr. Sophia Appleberg, escorted by Professor Maureen Goodenow. Dr. Sinru Arivahangan, escorted by Professor Michael Claire Salzler. Dr. Amanda Lynn Paskai, escorted by Professor Mark Atkinson. Dr. Tu Lee Finn, escorted by Professor Jane Dong. Dr. Hong Suk Choi, escorted by Roth Rene. Dr. Thomas G. Beal, escorted by Professor Kevin Behrens. Dr. Yi Yuan Shu, escorted by Professor Wesley Reeves.
The College of Nursing, Anna McDaniel, Dean.
Dr. Anastasia Albanese O'Neill, escorted by Professor Jennifer Elder. Dr. Carol Ann Daniel, escorted by Professor Ann Horgas. Dr. Angela White, escorted by Professor Jean-Marie Stacciarini.
The College of Public Health and Health Professions, Michael Perry, Dean. Just wait.
Yeah. I see,
okay. Caitlin Switalski, escorted by Professor Shelley Heaton. Dr. Pamela Dubiek, escorted by Professor Stephen Anton. Dr. Ying He, escorted by Professor Samuel Wu. Dr. Long Jiang, escorted by Professor Samuel Wu. Dr. Charles Gay, escorted by Professor Mark Bishop. Dr. Corey Simon, escorted by Professor Stephen George. Dr. Jose Dominguez, escorted by Professor Therese Shemiluski. Dr. Chaorong Xu, escorted by Professor Therese Shemiluski. Dr. Joshua Trochet, escorted by Professor Michelle Trochet. Dr. Nami Yu, escorted by Professor Jamie Pomerantz. Dr. Christopher Besser, escorted by Professor Jeffrey Harmon. Dr. Zheng Li, escorted by Professor Todd Manini. Dr. Sumil Swami, escorted by Professor Todd Manini.
The College of Veterinary Medicine, Amon Peck, Associate Dean.
Dr. Candace Lavelle, escorted by Professor Nancy Denslow. Dr. Galaxia Andrea Cortez Hinojosa, escorted by Professor James Wellahan. Dr. Jason Allen Ferrante, escorted by Professor James Wellahan. Dr. Catherine Ashley Saylor, escorted by Professor Anthony Barbette.
So thanks to all of you for receiving your doctoral degree. One more round of applause. Okay, we're not done yet. At this time, Dr. Frierson will present the candidates for the degrees Doctor of Audiology, Doctor of Plant Medicine, Doctor of Pharmacy, and Trustee Brandon will confer the degree upon the candidates.
Will the candidates for the degrees Doctor of Audiology, Doctor of Plant Medicine, and Doctor of Pharmacy please rise? Trustee Brandon, these candidates having completed all the requirements for the degrees Doctor of Audiology, Doctor of Plant Medicine, and Doctor of Pharmacy, and having been recommended by the graduate faculties of their colleges and the graduate school, are presented to you for the conferring of their degrees.
Thank you. On behalf of the people of the state of Florida, by the powers vested in the UF Board of Trustees, I'm pleased to confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Audiology, Doctor of Plant Medicine, and Doctor of Pharmacy with the accompanying rights, privileges, and responsibilities. I offer you my congratulations, commend you on your successful completion of your doctoral degree. You may be seated.
So now on the marshal signal, with the new doctors of audiology, plant medicine, and pharmacy, please come forward for your investiture. And the faculty members escorting these new doctors work closely with them during their graduate programs. And so it's appropriate to acknowledge the valuable mentoring role of the faculty members who help to educate this new class of scholars.
The College of Public Health and Health Professions, Michael Perry, Dean.
Dr. Lindsay Elise Benson.
The College of Pharmacy, Sven Norman, Assistant Dean.
Dr. Abera Gilleto Abu. Dr. Alethea Medley. Dr. Brittany Churchill. Dr. Amy Sieber. Dr. Thomas Christopher Reed. Dr. Anu Dominic. Dr. Cheryl Poss Fry. Dr. Kenneth Scott Ginsberg. Dr. Kwame Boateng. Dr. Jody Carla Spann. Dr. Jill A. Perez. Dr. Michelle Pionk-Messing. Dr. Emmeline Iberadem. Dr. Sunny Patel. Dr. Irlando Talusan Villanueva.
The College of Agricultural and Life Sciences, Elaine Turner, Dean.
Dr. Carla Jane Calvert Burkle, escorted by Dr. Amanda Hodges. Dr. Tomika Garrick, escorted by Professor Oscar Liebert. And we have the final doctorate graduate, Dr. Tatiana Sanchez, escorted by Professor Norm Liepla.
Family and friends, it's my great pleasure to present to you the University of Florida Fall Doctoral Class of 2014. Congratulations to all of the graduates. And now, to conclude today's ceremony, I want you to rise and join me in singing your alma mater. For guests, the words are printed on the back of your program. Professor Anthony Offerly will lead us in singing the alma mater. Following that alma mater song, we will have a platform party recessional to close the ceremony, so please remain in your seats until the platform party has exited the arena. Thank you all so much. Go Gators.
For eternal alma mater, thy glorious name we praise. All thy loyal sons and daughters